Well, good evening. I'm Alan Jackson, and welcome to Nashville. If you've watched this show before, you may have heard me mention that I grew up on a farm. This part of Nashville, where our church and studio are located, used to be very rural, but when Tennessee started getting mentioned as a great place to live, the highways got wider and the growth has never stopped. My father's a veterinarian who spent most of his time with horses, those lovely big animals that are both feared and loved. Why am I telling you that tonight? Because a week ago, a single horse managed to top all the other headlines of that day. It was a horse named Journalism, of all things. Even while actual journalism is falling apart, this particular journalism ran true to form, as he was born to do. And there's no spin in that story. Even with my dad, he would tell you, that's the truth. Well, it's our job to find the truth. It's all we talk about here. So with that, I want to introduce tonight's guest, the editor-in-chief of Breitbart News, Alex Marlow. Welcome back, Alex.
Pastor, it's always nice to see you. Thanks for having me back on your show.
Well, before we start with my questions, I want to mention that I looked up why the horse I was talking about was named Journalism. I don't recall hearing any horses named plumber or factory worker or checkout clerk. It turns out that the owner was a high school sports editor, and he thought that using the name would show an appreciation for the craft. Well, it used to be a craft, and now you and I spend hours each week trying to wade through a lot of disinformation. Maybe we start by you just telling us what you're seeing in this whole journalism arena.
Yeah, and it's interesting with the horses because didn't sovereignty end up beating journalism in the end, which I thought was pretty remarkable. We had a delight in the Breitbart newsroom just thinking about that prospect. We'd actually predicted it a couple of days prior to the event because we were rooting for sovereignty. Well, journalism in America is at this point completely broken. I wrote a book called Breaking the News about it, and I don't mention it to sell books. I mention just because I've spent a lot of work and a lot of time thinking about this stuff. They've essentially become stewards of the corporate status quo in this country. And their goal is not to inform the public. Their goal is largely to try to become palace guards for the corporate government elites that are running things. And Washington is run by this sort of super state of not just the bureaucracy and the government, but also these major corporations that benefit from either the way the government's set up, the government business, et cetera. And journalists in modern times, in order to gain access, have to protect those interests. One of the examples I always cite looking at the media, new media, the entertainment industry, and is you can look at some of these conglomerates like ABC Disney, which is actually ABC News, it's Disney, they have theme parks in China. They're not going to do a lot of the digging in the tough stories because they want things basically to go on as they are. NBC, it's not NBC News, it's NBC, Comcast, Universal. They got theme parks, they got movies, they got a business network, they got sports networks, they got the reality TV shows. They're not looking to rock the boat. And the best journalists are people who are willing to rock the boat. They're willing to stand up and have their voices heard and say, this may not be popular now, but this is the truth. And that is not the state of modern media, and it has not been that way for a long time.
You know, we're just beginning to learn about a lack of truth on a scale bigger than anything I can remember. The Biden White House and legacy media hiding the president's condition. Truth was the last thing on anyone's mind during those 4 years. Do you think we're still at the discovery phase of this massive cover-up?
I know we are. I just spoke to Congressman James Comer, who runs the House Oversight Committee, on my podcast, The Alex Marlow Show, and it's the episode from one of the most recent episodes, easy to find wherever you get your podcast. And he said flat out, we're bringing in everybody. We're bringing in the family members. We're bringing in the doctors. If they're willing, if they're not willing, he's going to get everyone on the record. And, you know, sometimes Washington's investigations don't go very far. Sometimes they're too slow. There's obstruction. So I will keep my hopes at a reasonable level that there'll be justice in the end. But I'll tell you, the vibe on Capitol Hill and in Washington is that this is the beginning. We're going to just start uncovering things now. And there's a renewed vigor and energy for investigating the Bidens and the people who propped up the Bidens.
Well, what's equally disturbing is the attention showered on people with no credibility in politics, who grew up with the best opportunities America has to offer, and they're now traveling around the world taking shots at the president and the new administration. In this case, I'm talking about this guy, Mr. Born in the USA.
The America I love, the America I've written about, that has been a beacon of hope and liberty for 250 years is currently in the hands of a corrupt, incompetent, and treasonous administration.
Tens of millions of dollars made in America, and now he's telling the rest of the world how bad things are here. How do you see that attitude?
Your point is the best point. This is the point to make, is that it's not just that he's a lib or he's woke or he's annoying to us. No, it's that he's doing this overseas. This is a guy who benefited from the United States of America more than just about any other person on earth, Bruce Springsteen. He's a guy who is singing Americana, talking to American audiences, trying to allegedly look out for working class Americans. That's his whole brand. And then he goes overseas to trash our country, to people in Europe where they do not have freedom. They do not have freedom of speech. The type of places where they're jailing people for online speech on it feels like every other week there's another one in the UK, and he's talking about that America is such a bad place because he's such a crybaby that he couldn't deal with Trump winning the election. What a whiner, what a loser, and it's very pathetic.
Well, given what we know about Joe Biden's condition, I'm wondering how he's going to get a book done now that he's shopping around for an 8-figure deal on it. I guess if he can use the White House auto signature machine to run the country, he can certainly have someone else write his book for him. What do you think?
Yeah, AI can do that for him. He'll get the book done. Pastor, I predicted this when he exited the race. I said there's going to be a time, it'll probably be 3 to 6 months after Donald Trump sworn in, where we're going to start seeing evidence that Joe Biden got an arrangement to get a bag of cash or 2 or 3. It's going to be from a university. It's going to be from a new think tank. It's going to be some sort of nonprofit, or it's going to be a book deal or a combination thereof. And we're talking about a guy who barely sells books. He's written books. I've read most of them because I wrote a book about Joe Biden, so I had to read all of his books. So all of you don't have to. They're not great, I'll tell you that. They're very diluted. But I will say they don't sell. He's never been a big seller of books. No one is dying to hear his story. He's clearly been in mental decline for years, if not decades. And we're talking about perhaps a $30 million book deal, probably be for him and Jill both to do books if it gets to be that number. They won't sell $1 million or $2 million worth of books. This is all a kickback. It's a grift. And if this happens, it's evidence that he got paid off to leave that race.
Well, for years now, one of the leading voices in liberal media has been Morning Joe, led by Joe Scarborough, the former Republican congressman of all things. NBC says that Morning Joe is one of its signature programs, despite some of the baseless commentary like this.
There's just no comparison between Joe Biden and Donald Trump. Historians will look back and they will say, why was this race close in February and early March? Because it makes no sense. This version of Biden, intellectually, analytically, is the best Biden ever. Not a close second. And I've known him for years.
Is there any reason to believe anything you ever hear from this particular morning host?
It's perfect. We can connect the whole conversation with this clip. First of all, this scandal with Joe Biden and this alleged cover-up. There was no cover-up. We all knew he was in deep mental decline. This is not a scandal about Joe's inner circle, keeping the public in the dark. We all knew. Joe Scarborough knew, Jake Tapper knew, everyone knew. We all knew. I wrote about it in my book 2 years ago. As a matter of fact, that he's in mental decline and his doctors won't reveal all of the conditions that he has. This is all stuff we were aware of. This was a big corporate cover-up. That's NBC News with what's MSNBC to protect the status quo. This is a media scandal more than anything else. And that clip right there shows you Joe Scarborough and Joe Biden know each other very well. Joe Biden courted Joe Scarborough's support in an active way, and Scarborough hit the bid. He went all in for Joe Biden repeatedly, despite everything that was apparent, and he lied the American public about it. That is a deeply revealing clip, and thanks for playing it.
Well, Alex, stay with us for another segment. If you want to get more of the truth in news during the week, the Alex Marlow Show produces a fresh podcast every day. Even had me on as a guest. I'll be right back. We're back now with the author and editor, Alex Marlow. His two best-selling books are Breaking Biden and Breaking the News. Alex, I haven't been to the beach yet this summer. It's still a little cold to be swimming, But the former FBI director, James Comey, he took a stroll through the sand recently. And according to his social media posting, he just happened to spot some shells. And they just happened to spell out something that means get rid of President Trump. He had a couple of mis-explanations for it. On MSNBC, he said that seashells were displayed so nicely that they must have been laid out by someone with an artistic touch, and that the display was actually discovered by his wife. He also said he thought it was simply a clever political expression. He said all this on MSNBC, so there was no lie detector on him. But Alex, his efforts to push what Comey would call his truth reminded me that classic children's story written by Carlo Collodi, Pinocchio. What's your take on it?
Yeah, it's similar. There's no scenario in the world where the former FBI director would be unfamiliar that the term 86 means eliminate. That's what it means. We all know that's what it means. Even normal people, decently read people know that. The FBI director, of course, knows that. So he knew what he was doing. It was an assassination dog whistle. He would like for someone to assassinate President Trump. He hates President Trump, and he would like for that to happen. And now he's playing it, oh, it was my wife's fault. These were cute shells. If you heard his explanation for it, Pastor, he was saying, well, we were on a romantic walk on the beach talking about my new novel that's coming out. And it's all about selling books and getting attention for this guy. He's not the brightest bulb in Washington. There's a lot of people on the other side of the aisle, Pastor, that I think are very smart and talented. Comey's not one of these guys. He's kind of a dopey guy, and he got in way over his head, the FBI, and was one of the orchestrators of the Russian collusion hoax. He's a bad guy, and he's caused this country a lot of harm, and he should be investigated for that.
Well, to make matters worse, Comey insists that he doesn't think that what he did warrants prosecution, but it isn't his decision. Having the former FBI director signaling to a world full of disturbed people that President Trump should be taken out, it's clearly out of line. If you don't prosecute him, how can you do it with a guy who hid outside Trump's golf course getting ready to shoot him? Something has to be done, doesn't it?
Yeah, I think so. I think that's right. When you see they've already made attempts in his life. They've already shot him in the ear. It was a minor miracle. It was a major miracle that it was divine intervention. I asked you this when I interviewed you on my show, and you said, what else could it be other than divine intervention that Trump wasn't assassinated last time? We've got to knock this stuff off, and we got to get back to being able to peacefully disagree in this country and not, I don't like your politics, so I want to 86 you.
Well, let's turn to something positive, especially during a holiday week. A lot of people are getting on the road and filling their cars and SUVs with the least expensive gas when adjusted for inflation in more than 20 years. And if they're having an egg sandwich along the way, a dozen eggs is back under $4 a dozen now. America may not be entirely great again yet, but the president is keeping his promises, or at least it seems he is to me.
He certainly is. He's definitely trying to accomplish things as quickly as possible. I think, first of all, it kind of floods the zone, so it's harder for the left to push back and for the media and for these district court judges to have injunctions on everything. So I like that approach. And a lot of the things that Trump has said have come true despite what the media would have told you. The egg prices is a clear one, where egg prices have come down a lot after the media was furious that he didn't drop them in the first 48 hours. And then there's other items as well. He's trying to tap the energy sector that will drive down energy prices. I think that's another big one. We were also told that his tariffs are going to lead to a drastic rise in prices, big inflation. We're not seeing any of that yet. Now, do I think some goods from China, there might be a one-time price hike? Yeah, I think it's still possible, but it is not happening yet. We are not seeing those numbers yet, and it just shows you that President Trump really does know what he's doing.
Well, one quick question before we go. Do you think President Trump and his team can sustain this pace of initiating change? It's dizzying.
It is dizzying, and a lot of this is going to come down to people like you and me, Pastor, making sure people are engaged and ready to vote in those midterms, because elections are what's going to be the difference between Trump having a successful presidency and a historic presidency. It's only going to be historic if he continues to get electoral wins to get a bigger and bigger mandate so that he can get more done without people interfering. I can't say enough how important it was that he won that popular vote, that he won all those swing states. It really neutralizes a lot of the arguments against him. Like this is not a democracy. He's a dictator. He's an autocrat. They can't say any of that stuff because democracy worked and he won. Let's run up the score next time.
Alex Marlow, it's been great to have you on with us again. We'll see you again soon, and I'm happy to go back on your podcast as long as you tell me that my ratings are good.
The ratings are fantastic, Pastor. I always enjoy the conversation, and congrats on the book.
Thank you. In a moment, some thoughts of my own about the best kind of go-forward plan. I'll be right back. We live in a time of unprecedented manipulation and deception. The lies coming from the legacy media and influential voices in D.C. are astonishing. These voices say that tariffs will wipe away our savings and investments, and that ICE will come knocking on our doors to drag away people who are here legally, and that due process will be taken away for even law-abiding citizens. Well, those same voices, they covered up the mental and physical decline of former President Biden. They refused to tell the truth. They say that President Biden was as cogent and sharp as ever, even though it was plain to see that wasn't the case. We're finding out more and more about the intricate operation to keep the truth hidden. My question is, why didn't the influential voices who knew the truth disclose that pertinent info years ago? Who was actually making decisions at the White House during the last administration? Don't the citizens of this country have a right to know? Well, I would suggest to you that deception, lies, and a refusal to acknowledge the truth is a spiritual conflict more than a political one. Because of the absence of God in a person's life, a moral compass is broken. It's just absent. And if a person has no moral compass, they'll say whatever they need to say that is self-serving. They tend to think of life in terms of, how do I get what I want? How do I get my objective? How do I get my agenda accomplished? They don't even think in terms of whether it's true or false. They just want to get what they want. Well, I'll remind you that truth cannot be defeated. There's a moral and spiritual authority in the truth. And if the truth is suppressed, it's like holding a ball underwater. Eventually, it's going to come up again. Now, this is the question I get asked often. What can we do? What is there that we can do? Well, first, put the Word of God in your heart. Then become determined to become a person of truth. Psalm 119 said, "Your word I've hidden in my heart that I might not sin against you." Speak the truth. Start at your kitchen table. Bring the truth to your home, and then take the truth to your extended family, then to your friends where you spend maybe your discretionary time. If we'll determine to become people of truth, I promise you there are more reasons for hope than despair. Well, that's my message for tonight, and after a short break, we'll start looking at your messages. We got emails. I will take just a moment and thank you for your time that you share with us each evening. You know, this program is a partnership. There's a team of us here that work really hard to gather some information and to share it, but you're very much a part of that team. Your willingness to not only give us your time, but to actually share that invitation with friends will make all the difference in our future. Maybe you could host a watch party and get together and talk about the things you agree with and even those few you might disagree with. If you miss an episode, you can go to ajnow.com. They're all archived there. You can see them at your leisure. You can even sign up for our free newsletter and keep up to speed with all the happenings around the program. Now we've got some emails. Greg S. from York, Nebraska wrote, "With the way the world is trending and taking into considerations the warning of the end times referenced in the Bible, it really makes you wonder just exactly how bad it was in the times of Noah. How wicked would the fellows of Noah's day had been if they'd had access to AI? Well, I can give you my perspective. The Bible says Noah was a preacher of righteousness. He preached for decades, and there were only 8 people on the boat, and they were all family. If you're a preacher, that is a very difficult world to live in. I can't imagine, but if there's not a change, we're going to see it soon." Michael S. from Blanchard, Oklahoma said, "I've been watching your program for several months now and enjoy your honest assessments of the world today." You know, Michael, one of the most encouraging things I see is voices that are rising up in all sorts of new spaces like this one, telling the truth and helping us keep informed. God's moving in the earth, and we're honored to have a small part in that. Michael B. from Florida asked, "Since the UN supports Iran, Hamas, and others, should the U.S. declare the UN a terrorist organization and defund the UN?" It's just a thought. Well, that's one option. I tend to err on the side of being an optimist. I'd prefer to see the UN reformed and once again become a voice for good in our world and become an agency that tells the truth. And that won't happen without some determined effort. It's easier to sit in the bleachers and heckle, but I believe if we begin to pray and be involved at our local level in practicing telling the truth, just perhaps that could catch on and make it all the way to the United Nations. That would be wonderful to watch. I'm Alan Jackson. I want to thank you for sharing a few minutes with us this evening, and I pray you have a wonderful remainder of the day.